Hello, and welcome to the Ladies' Night. We are so happy to have you here. I'm Allison Vest, the collaborative pianist with the Ladies Reading Society, and I'm happy to be able to introduce our MC for tonight, Dr. Erica Glenn. Erica is the current conductor of the BYU Hawaii Concert Choir and Gilbert Youth Choir. She has also directed the Dean College, the American International School of Utah, and Arizona State University, where she conducted the Women's Chorus and served as chorus masters for operas. Erica founded virtualchoirconductor.com and the International Virtual Children's Choir, and is a co-founder of the ASU Women's Collaborative. In 2020, Erica became a Fulbright Scholar, a conducting fellow in the Cortona Sessions, and a Kennedy Center virtual teaching artist. The previous year, she received ASU's Teaching Excellence Award and guest conducted the Chattanooga Symphony Orchestra. Erica is also an award-winning composer for works for choir, voice, and music theater. She holds a DMA in conducting, a BM and MM in composition, and an EdM in the arts and education from Harvard. She helped rediscover the lost music of Ukraine's first female composer, Stefania Turkevich, and feels strongly about advocating for female conductors and composers. As a note, we will be sharing website links for all of our collaborators, so be sure to check the Crowdcast chat box to access those. If you're having trouble accessing the chat box on a mobile device, remember to switch your browser view from mobile friendly to the full desktop version. Dr. Glenn will be our MC for our live stream tonight, and without further ado, I'll turn the time over to Erica.
Thank you so much for that warm welcome, Allison, and welcome everybody to our Ladies' Night. I am honored to be here with all of you tonight, celebrating the creativity of female composers, performers, and artists of all kinds during Women's History Month. We hope you enjoy the rich diversity of music you will hear tonight. Before we kick off our concert, we wanted to introduce you to all of the contributors to tonight's concert who are here in person with us tonight. And I encourage you to take just a second to scan the screen in front of you. We have quite the powerhouse group of women assembled here tonight. So much talent in one space. And deepest thanks to the Ladies Reading Society for making tonight possible. So let's start by introducing you to each of the composers. We'll have them briefly unmute themselves and give a quick hello when I say their name. So to begin with, Tanya Landau. She is a vocal performance major at ASU and a recent participant in the Arizona Women's Collaborative.
Hello, everyone.
Next, we have Adrian Albert, an award-winning composer from Los Angeles, California.
Hi, everybody. Nice to be here.
We have Dr. Amy Dunker, professor of music at Clark University, where she teaches music theory, aural skills, composition, and trumpet.
Hello, everyone. It's nice to see you.
Kahkonen, a flutist and composer from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Hello, it's a pleasure to be here.
Mary Watkins, a prolific composer, arranger, and performer from Oakland, California.
Hello, everybody.
And with that, we'll advance to our dancers and choreographers. We have quite the multimedia experience for you here tonight. We'll begin with Siva Pooja Ramachandran, a graduate student at ASU who specializes in classical Indian dance.
Hi.
And then we also have with us tonight Natalee Maxwell, a professional ballet dancer and visual artist from Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Hello, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
And finally, last but definitely not least, our talented musicians who are bringing this music to life. We'll begin with Rose Johnson, who plays flute and piccolo from Issaquah, Washington.
Hello.
Then we have Nicole Marriott-Fullmer, oboe and English horn from Pleasant Grove, Utah.
Hi.
Lori Shepard on clarinet and bass clarinet from Woodinville, Washington.
Hello, glad to be here.
Sonja Reynolds, who plays horn from Pleasant Grove, Utah. Cassandra Bendickson on the bassoon from Tucson, Arizona.
Hi, everybody.
Robyn Watson, also on bassoon from Dallas, Texas.
Hi.
And finally, the lovely woman that you met at the very beginning of this stream, Allison Vest on piano from Rexburg, Idaho.
Hello from Idaho.
So now that you have some familiarity with the faces on this screen, we're going to transition into our broadcast. And I wanted to give you some brief background on the Ladies Reading Society before we do. So this broadcast is produced by the Ladies Reading Society, which is an organization that explores what it means to be a female musician in the modern landscape of classical music. And beneath the broader umbrella of LRS are several smaller chamber groups, including Trio de Bois, the Ladies Quintessential Quintet, Shepherd's Rose, and many others. Each female performer who is involved is a powerhouse in her own right, as I mentioned earlier, and together, collectively, these women span a wide breadth of professions. They are professors, orchestral musicians, freelancers, private instructors, collaborative chamber artists, and full-time working musicians. And in addition to being dedicated musicians, they also enjoy fulfilling lives as wives, mothers, and teachers with spouses and partners, children, hundreds of private students, and many cherished pets. The spirit of artistic collaboration and support fuels the growth of the Ladies Reading Society, and this concert is just one manifestation of that spirit. What started out as a reed trio and woodwind quintet in 4 states now embraces dancers, composers, artists, and musicians in no fewer than 8 states, and our reach continues to spread. This kind of a growth mindset does require support of all kinds, both artistic and financial. So if you have an interest in supporting continued future projects from Ladies Quintessential Quintet and Trio de Bois, you can donate through our 501c3 sponsor, Collaborative Musicians Project. There's a donate button that you will see at the bottom of this screen that will take you directly to the donation site. Another great way to provide support is by subscribing as a patron on the Ladies Reading Society Patreon site, where you can provide ongoing support at a variety of levels. We will also have merchandise available in the future. And with that, we are going to jump into our concert. The first piece that we have is Azarenya, which means illumination in Russian. Tanya Landau is our composer. We have Rose Johnson on the flute, Lori Shepard on the bass clarinet, and Allison Vest on piano. And this is one of the pieces that integrates choreography as well. So our choreographer and dancer for this piece is Siva Pooja Ramachandran. And I'm going to ask Allison Vest how this piece came to be a part of tonight's program.
Thanks, Erica. One of my most favorite things about what we do as the Ladies Reading Society, or LRS, is collaboration. And an ad was seen on social media calling for women and female identifying individuals of the arts to collaborate in an online platform. Singers, dancers, composers, musicians. This organization, which is the Arizona Women's Collaborative, welcomed us with open arms, and as we joined in their concert. 3 of our members, Lori, Rose, and I, were paired with composer Tanya Landau and dancer Siva Ramachandran. We worked together to create this next piece, Tanya composing tirelessly, Siva dancing, and the 3 of us learning everything we could. To continue celebrating Women's History Month, Azarenya, or Illumination, was a perfect fit as it brings light and resilience into the trial that has been the last year. Siva's beautiful Indian classical art form adds such joy and connection at a time when we need it most. Welcome. I'm Allison Vest, the collaborative pianist of the Ladies Reading Society, and I have here composer, pianist, vocalist, musician, all around about Tanya Landau. So thanks for answering a couple questions for us.
Yeah, of course. I'm really happy to be here.
Awesome, awesome. I know you're super busy. It's getting towards the end of the semester, so we just really appreciate your time for sure. We want you to tell us, what do you find unique about being a woman composer?
I think that what's unique about it is, I guess, just that our perspective has not maybe been heard or spotlighted as much throughout history. And so there's something almost rebellious about it. And I really enjoy having a voice and being able to have a platform to speak up and have that voice be heard, especially because, you know, there's this terrible stereotype that women are too emotional or their music will be too emotional and not kind of grounded, whatever that's supposed to mean. And I think that there is so much to be heard and women need to be heard and their voices need to be amplified and our stories need to be told. And so I'm really proud to be a part of that.
Awesome. Very agree. Full of agree. Can you tell us about the composition, Illumination? I wish my Russian was better. So how do you say the name of it again?
It's Azarenya.
Azarenya. Okay. Yeah. Tell us about the piece. What inspired you? And does it have a message?
Yeah, absolutely. So the piece for me was really just a process of working through some of the emotions and kind of pain that came out of the last year. And really what I found is just that it's a piece about hope. It's a piece about light. And I really see the different movements of the melodic lines to be gathering together almost like embers that kind of fan a flame that is burning throughout the piece. And it starts off maybe a little bit more unsure, a little bit more anxious. And as it goes along, they start to gather together and support one another, the three instruments. And by the end, you come to a place of peace, a peace within yourself, a peace with what has happened, and that fire of hope burning inside of you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Siva Pooja. I'm the dancer and choreographer in the piece Illumination. As the name suggests, it was definitely a way for me to look forward to something, or it was a source of hope. I'd like to thank Tanya, Laurie, Allison, and Rose for creating such a warm environment for me to work along with them. As the name suggests, it's a very hope-filled piece that is created in this very difficult situation. But I was wondering if I would have any difficulties in conversing with them before the choreography. How would I bring in all the subtle elements that musicians, lyricists, all the different elements that come together to create such a beautiful soul-filled music. But I would say the music definitely talked all of it out to me, and having a theme and having the base of their nature being reflected on the music that all of them created really helped me to feel the connection with them and also receive energy with them and kind of empathize with them. And I also wanted to give them my energy to kind of say that we're all in this together. So I would say that it was such a lovely way of putting all the feminine energy together and supporting each other in through Zoom, though even we haven't even met each other in person. But I definitely feel very comfortable and so proud that we did this together. Thank you all so much, and I hope you have a great time.
With that wonderful introduction from our composer and choreographer, we will now transition to Azarenya, or Illumination. We hope you enjoyed that beautiful, evocative piece, Azarenya. And we'll now transition to our second piece on the program. This is called Ménage à Trio, composed by Adrian Albert with Nicole Marriott-Fullmer on the oboe and English horn, Laurie Shepard on the clarinet, and Robyn Watson on bassoon. And I'm going to direct this next question to Laurie Shepard and let her talk a little bit about the piece. Laurie, the next piece, Ménage à Trio, came to Trio de Bois through an open call for scores, right? So out of all of the entries, what drew you to this piece?
Thank you, Erica. Last year, as we were looking at what direction we would like to take while having limited live performance opportunities, we decided that a recording project would work very well with our newfound skills. We put out a call for scores to find new works for Reed Trio, and we were so pleased with the response. We had over 65 entries, and the members of the trio took all of those entries and we studied every score. We studied them independently, and then we really tried hard not to discuss amongst ourselves. We created a list of our favorites, like our top 10 and our top 20, and we listened to every single piece, and then we came together. And at the top of our list, you know, the top 10 varied a little bit, but at the very top of everyone was Ménage à Trio. And so that was the first piece we decided to work on together. From there, we contacted Adrian Albert and began working on the piece, and from there, and have just had a delightful time working with both the music and the composer. So I'm very grateful to present to you this piece today. So thank you. Have you been doing a lot of collaborating in the last year?
I've done quite a bit of it.
Yeah.
Because of the COVID, you know, collaborating for me is difficult. And so I've been writing a number of solo pieces. I wrote a solo piece for bassoon called Serenade that has gotten a lot of play, which I'm very happy to say it's been quite wonderful. I took a couple of classes with a wonderful composer by the name of Jenny Brandon. You probably know Jenny. Yeah, she's terrific, and she's a wonderful teacher. And so she gave a series of classes, and one was for flute, one was for oboe, and one was for bassoon. And because I'd never really written solo pieces for either oboe or bassoon, I learned a lot. And it was quite a wonderful experience.
Well, when I go through your library and when I listen to your works on your composition works on YouTube, there's always something that feels like it could be adapted for voice easily. Maybe you could expand a little bit on just where your inspirations come from and where you feel like your compositional voice comes from.
Well, it's interesting that you talk about the voice and a compositional voice, because I used to be a singer. And so every line that I compose, I think, well, if you can sing it, you can play it. My voice comes from my heart and from my gut. I think of compositions as emotional expressions. When I decided to start composing, which was really in midlife, I did not have the experience of going back to school and studying, you know, serious composing. I went back to school. I lived in New York for a long time and was a professional singer there. And then when I moved back to Los Angeles and decided to go back to school, I went back to my alma mater, which is UCLA. And they had a series of classes at night for composing for film. And at the time, I thought, well, you know, it might be interesting to compose for movies and television. And as I got into the classes, I realized, no, that's not really what I what I wanted. I wanted to compose what I wanted to compose. It was a process of learning certain techniques, but also coming to understand my own voice. What's more interesting to me is the communication of music to the listener and how it makes the listener feel.
Right.
Although I am, I really do feel that I think about my environment, the ambiance. I find that traveling is really important in terms of giving one a sense of other things that you can think about in terms of creating a piece of music. And when as a teacher, I encourage students to do as much travel as they possibly can, because it brings so much new information to us.
Do you have any women who have been influential or inspiring in music for you?
I mean, I'm just thinking now of my friend Leslie, who just called. You know, although our music is very different. I mean, she has always been in the pop field. She had a tremendous influence on me and my music. I have a very dear friend, Alex Shapiro, who is a wonderful composer, and she is a mentor. Oh, yeah.
Absolutely, yes.
And of course, Jenny Brandon, and Christian Schillinger, with whom I've worked over the years, and I adore her, and she's a wonderful bassoonist. And, you know, really one of the people I think of, because I did work with Leonard Bernstein, was his wife, Felicia Bernstein, who, although she was not a musician, she was an actress, a wonderful actress, and a great dancer, and just a really extraordinary human being. I think of her as somebody who has brought a lot to my life, as has my mother.
Mm-hmm.
My mother was a really great violinist. My mother studied in Brussels when she was a teenager, and she was a child prodigy. And she became a very successful professional musician in a time when women were not thought of to be hired. You know, she was a studio musician. She worked for Fox, and she worked for Universal, and she worked for Charlie Chaplin, and she worked for all kinds of musicians and places of film history. When I was growing up, both my parents were wonderful musicians. And the reason I started the piano was because they thought that they wanted to have an accompanist. Thanks to them, I became a pianist before I became a singer. And, you know, and that kind of started me off on my career and growth as a musician throughout my life.
If you wouldn't mind an introduction for Ménage a Trio for our performance, I would greatly appreciate that.
Well, Ménage a Trio came about, now that I'm recalling it, because the trio that performed it, Susan Greenberg, a flutist, Helen Good, wonderful clarinetist, and Carolyn Beck, bassoonist, had an opportunity to do a concert at the Annenberg home down on a Pacific Coast Highway, right at the edge of the Pacific Ocean. But they've transformed it into both an art gallery and a studio and a place where one can give concerts, and it's a fabulous place. And so since it was going to be performed at the beach, I thought, well, the piece, and I knew the instrumentation, the piece should, of course, have something to do with the seaside. And so I grew up in Los Angeles, and I was a real beach rat. And as a teenager, I would go to the beach every weekend and I loved it. Anyway, so I decided that, I spent my life at the beach until I moved to New York, when I rarely went to the beach. And the piece just kind of flowed, ebbed and flowed, right? As the tide came in. The second movement I wrote during the time that a very dear friend of mine had recently passed away. And so I wrote The Lament. And the third movement also, again, had to do with the beach and, coming to the beach and playing and having a good time and the waves coming in and out. And, it was a nice description of a place that I've always loved and that I've always gone to. Sometimes when you sit and you think about something and when you're meditating, when one is meditating, I go to the beach.
Well, thank you so much. And without further ado, Trio de Bois with Ménage a Trio.
Welcome back, everyone, from your experience with that remarkable piece. We now have another remarkable piece for you, composed by Dr. Amy Dunker, with Sonja Reynolds on horn and Allison Vest on piano. This piece is called When There Are Nine. And I have a question for Sonja, our horn player. What inspired you as a performer to work with this piece, When There Are Nine?
Well, at the passing of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Dr. Amy Dunker composed this piece and very generously shared it on social media. When we were planning for this concert, I knew this would be the perfect piece to honor and celebrate two specific women, Dr. Amy Dunker, who, by the way, it's been such a pleasure to work with her in this project, and Ruth Bader Ginsburg for paving the way for all women for equality in our day. What do you find unique about being a woman composer?
You know, I grew up in the going through the 70s and I was in college in the 80s, and the whole thing was, you want equal rights, all this kind of stuff. The glass ceiling is still very much there, and the wall is still very much there. I still ran into a gentleman that referred to my male students as those fine young men, and myself and another colleague as the girls. It's like, the girls have doctorates and are yeah, it's difficult. I think just in the past few years there's been a real burst of letting women in the door with music. It used to be really just, this is our woman composer that we will sanction, and you go to these band places like, I'll just say it outright, Midwest, it's all men. And a couple of years ago, they kind of taken to task on that, but it's still all men. I was there probably maybe 10 years ago, and I counted all the women that were on the program. There were 2 compositions by women of all the pieces played at Midwest, and they're both educational pieces.
And I've never been to Midwest. My husband worked for a manufacturer, so he got to go to all those fun places. But Midwest, I've never been to. I'd love to, but I've heard similar things. Yeah, interesting.
Trumpet Guild is way ahead of them. Way ahead of them.
Oh yeah, and was it 2016? I noticed one of your pieces was performed at the ITG.
Yeah, ITG has become much more women-friendly over the years.
Yes.
And they're way ahead of Midwest, and they're way ahead of the band directors, I should say.
Yeah. Yeah, I wonder how much that is instrument specific versus in trumpet alone. Most of the professionals I know are women now. I don't know if that's just because that's who my friends are, or you know what I mean. But
there's a lot more than there used to be. We've fought our way through the male patriarchy and dealt with some pretty bad stuff. And now that it's a sort of new day, there's more of us out there, and the younger men are much more open to women. They don't see the difference or have that innate prejudice that older generation who's kind of retired now had. I can't imagine being Susan Slaughter in that generation before she's fought through, being one of the real firsts. Well, I think we've come a little bit further in color. We're more concerned about racism than we are misogyny and sexism these days. It's sort of the oldest prejudice, and it may be the last prejudice to go. I mean, I've met people who are really, against racism, and then you tell them something about your experience as a woman, and it's like, no big deal. But it's still the same thing.
That's what, of course, drew me to your piece, When There Are Nine, was all of the work that Ruth Bader Ginsburg did for women.
None of us would be where we are without her and her husband. For a man of his generation to recognize her talent and her gift as really being greater than his, or at least in that area, and supporting her through all of that, and being willing to be, in the background and even joke about it,
Yeah.
But he said, he was totally cool and supportive of that.
Okay, so let's talk about this piece. I love it, as I'm sure everybody else is. I'm guessing you wrote this at her passing, or did you start writing this before?
After her passing. I was watching the funeral and those things at the time.
Tell me about that. Like, so just during her funeral, did you think, I'd like to write a piece? Or was it just, I don't know, for me with stuff like that, there's some things are just feelings, and then a day later I'm like, oh gosh, I really want to do something with that, and then I'll act on it, you know?
No, I've always admired her. You know, I've always thought if she, no matter what room she is in, she might just be the smartest person in that room, regardless of who's in the room. I've always admired her, and I really admired her, and I wanted to write something that would, just something little that would honor her. We never had the opportunity to meet her, unfortunately, person to person. So sort of the best thing I could do is, okay, this is my little honor.
And with that, Sonja and Allison now present When There Are Nine. Next up, we have a real treat for you, a piece by the composer Kahkonen for flute, piccolo, and clarinet with choreography, dance, and art integrated. This piece is called Woman with ... And performing, we have Rose Johnson on flute and piccolo and Laurie Shepard on clarinet with Natalee Maxwell in charge of choreography, dance, and art. So Rose Johnson, would love to ask you a question. How did you discover Woman with ... and what inspired you to want to perform this piece?
Well, it's been, really interesting. Every year I go to the National Flute Convention and I dig through bins looking through music, and I came across Gay Kahkonen's piece, Woman With, and I was entranced by the cover. It's just got a silhouette of a woman, and just the title, Woman With ... being incomplete, but having the title of each movement completing that title of Woman With. And I love the concept that a woman could be complete with any trait that is unique to her personality, experience, or imagination. Lori and I had a brief performance live of this piece back in 2019 in a coffee shop. That's a story for another day. But as we started producing these recordings and videos with imagery and storylines, we really thought this piece would be a really good match. And this would be an excellent canvas for a collaboration with a dancer and an artist. We found both dancer and artist in the incredibly talented Natalee Maxwell, and we allowed her to have a free interpretation of the choreography. I really enjoyed talking with Gay Kahkonen, the talented composer of Woman With. Here's a portion of the interview I had with Gay, and it will be followed with Natalee talking about her interpretation and experience. What women have influenced you the most in your life and your music?
Well, first I would say my mother, of course, because she was responsible always for making sure that I practiced and that I got to my music lessons. Also, Wendy Coomer continues to be my mentor. She's my champion. She's always looking out for opportunities for me. And she's an amazing teacher and flute enthusiast, and just her energy is so powerful that she can gather the masses together and make them do something they would never think they would do. As far as people who influence me that I don't have personal contact with, I would say Libby Larson. She was one of the first women composers that kind of came across my radar. She really blazed a trail, I think, for other women composers at a time when women just didn't have opportunities and weren't taken seriously in the music industry.
What is unique to you about being a woman composer, for yourself as well as in general?
Well, I'm in my 50s now, and I think when I was in the conservatory, it was more unusual to be a woman in the composition program. I felt that I always had to be louder than everybody else to make a space for myself. Really had to carve out an existence there and a right to exist and a right to be taken seriously. Now that I'm older, I think less about that because I'm just being myself. And that doesn't require anybody's approval or recognition. I'm just being myself.
This composition we're performing, Woman With, can you tell me about the composition, what inspired you to write it, what it's about, any of those things?
Woman With was commissioned by Dan Paraski and Amanda Morrison. They commissioned this piece a number of years ago. Actually, the first title of the piece was Portraits, and I was going to write a series of portraits, like painting a portrait. And then, I don't know, it just sort of evolved into every portrait was of a woman and of a specific look. So then I changed the title to Woman With. But so each little piece is like its own little nugget, and each describes a period of maybe like creativity for a woman. So I had this image once of what I call dancing woman with head full of sky, and it was an image of a woman with like clouds flowing through her head, just like streaming through creative ideas. And so that was the first inspiration for the piece. So I have Dreamwalking Feet, which is kind of about when you're walking the path and you're thinking, and you know, things are kind of measured, but you're grounded, but your thoughts are up here. And that's Dreamwalking Feet. And then Head Full of Sky is the dancing woman with head full of sky. And there's one called Head Full of Colors, which I have the hardest time explaining, but it's sort of like about the warmth of beauty, or like, I think I used a term that it's like the friendliness of beauty, which is kind of a funny thing, but that's the best way I can think to describe it. Then there's Eyes Full of Fire, which is passion. And finally, Hands Full of Stars, which I think of as releasing one's creations out into the universe and just hoping for the best, hoping for connection, hoping for beauty. And they're really very simple pieces. They're not anything extraordinary, but I think each one is a good description of the image, of the imagery.
Hi, my name is Natalee Maxwell, and I'm an artist and dancer from Albuquerque, New Mexico. And I am the choreographer and performer behind Kahkonen's Woman With. And I just wanted to speak with you for a few minutes about my experience and my interpretation of her beautiful music. Initially listening to each of the 5 compositions within Woman With, I found they had a deeply grounded and spiritual quality. I think the flute and clarinet really speak to the breath and movement of life, and contemporary dance is the perfect language to exemplify that. I also incorporated classical ballet because flute has, or at least to me, gives me a very classical sensation. It makes me want to move a certain way. And so by merging the two, contemporary, which is a bit more authentic and organic, comes from a deeper place, whereas classical is a little more rigid and technical. Using both of those elements together, I wanted to create a piece that was very autobiographical. After diving deeper into the themes that I felt each composition played out, I decided that I, in fact, was the woman with. And being that it's a solo performance, that's already speaking towards that very strongly. But I want to step further by adding elements that are more personal to me, such as the mirroring aspect. As a classical dancer, the mirror has been a huge tool in my training, and the strange relationship that dancers have with the mirror is deceitful but also essential to growing as an artist. And it also, I think, is a metaphor for duality, the highs and lows and oppositional qualities that each of us have are what make us unique. And I wanted to show that also through the performance. It was interesting when I was speaking with Gay a little more in detail about her music. She mentioned that she would go for walks before she wrote music, or as she was writing her music, and that her walking would create the meter for the composition. And so I found that there was a very symbiotic relationship already embedded into this music, in which the movement of the body and the breath and the music are entwined. And I wanted to show that through the video editing by incorporating moments of silence in which the movement set the tone and created an interlude into the music. And going back to the idea of this being an autobiographical project, I found it funny because when I was also talking to Gay, she mentioned that Woman With was initially titled Portrait, and each of the 5 tracks were quite literally musical portraits of 5 different women. And I think as a larger theme, anytime an artist, dancer, musician, poet creates, that there is a strong sense of self-portraiture into the art. Every piece of art produced is, in essence, self-portraiture. And I think the more that we each share more about ourselves and dig deeper into our authentic nature, the better. The more encouraging and the better climate it is for other people to be creative and reach and aspire to things that they didn't think they could. And one woman's experience speaks toward women's collective experience. So I think it was very poignant that Woman With is, of course, written by a woman, danced by a woman, and now being viewed by women. So I hope you all enjoy and take something unique away from this project. Thank you for letting me be a part of it.
And after those introductions, we now take you to the video of Woman With ... featuring Rose Johnson, Laurie Shepard, and Natalee Maxwell. Enjoy. Wow. Wasn't that a profound musical experience? Thank you so much to all of the women who performed that piece in such a deeply moving and collaborative way. We're excited now to present a special encore performance of The Party Line, composed by Mary Watkins with Rose Johnson on flute, Nicole Marriott-Fullmer on oboe, Lori Shepard on clarinet, and Sonja Reynolds on horn, with Cassandra Bendickson on bassoon. And I have a question now that is directed to Cassandra. Tell us a little bit about why the quintet programmed The Party Line.
So we played The Party Line last month on our concert in honor of Black History Month, where we got to play an entire concert of music by two living Black composers, Sidney Guillaume and Mary Watkins. This piece, The Party Line by Mary Watkins, was one of two of her pieces played that night. It features a Ladies Quintessential Quintet and makes a really great callback to that concert, as well as a natural choice for this concert of music entirely by women. For the video, we dressed and acted in character of the 1950s, the days of the shared phone line or party line, when as many as 8 families might wind up sharing one phone line. I think my grandmother even had one. We began to think of our shared Zoom and teleconference experience in the pandemic as an homage to those days and ways of communicating, so we used that imagery in the video. The piece itself is fun and energetic, and we had a blast putting it together from our 3 different states. The Party Line for Wind Quintet by Mary Watkins makes for a perfectly festive and celebratory way to end tonight's experience, uplifting the voices of brilliant, talented, and determined women. Miss Watkins attended that streaming concert and was kind enough to be interviewed by our flutist, Rose, in preparation for the concert, and I think we're going to hear a little bit of that interview before diving into the piece. Please enjoy The Party Line by Mary D. Watkins.
Thank you for meeting with me. I would like to ask you, how did your musical journey begin? When did you get introduced to music, and what sparked that for you?
The journey began when I was really little. I was not quite 4, and my mother thought it would just be a great idea to give me piano lessons. She got me started playing piano. And then I would hear music live at church, and I can't remember when it didn't mean something very personal to me, though. It was all, I didn't particularly like piano lessons. I didn't, but I didn't because, well, I had an ear and I could play what I heard. And so I didn't really like playing the music that was written, you know, those cute little...
Yes. What were your goals as you went to study music in college?
Well, I was a music education major, which, I don't know, I just thought that made sense to do that. They didn't teach composition or anything like that. I started in junior college, 2-year college. So I was thinking, well, I'll probably teach music, but in my heart of hearts, I remember the first time that I really heard beautiful symphonic music in music history class, and I thought, I want to do that. That's what I wanted to do. But I didn't do it for the first 2 years in school. I kind of, later, I dropped out, and later I got married and I went back to school. At that time, that was at Howard University. Mm-hmm. I made it very clear that I wanted to major in composition. And so that's where we were. And I didn't know for sure what I wanted to do with it, except I just want to create music.
That's fantastic. What was it like attending college at Howard University, and how many women were pursuing music degrees at the time you were there?
Well, there were a lot of women who were majoring in music. They were majoring probably like me, or like I had in the past. They were majoring in music education, but some of them were really preparing themselves for the concert stage.
So on a different note, we are playing Party Line, and I would love to get some background, the history, synopsis, your inspiration.
Well, the Party Line, I liked woodwind quintet. I just think you can do a lot of things with woodwinds. You know, you can do, your humor can be very well expressed. I mean, you've got the bassoon and, you know, clarinet. I mean, it's just a great group to write for. See, what inspired me to write those is just that I had probably been, I'd been to a concert, a friend of mine, and we used to go all these new music concerts together. And so I remember that right after one of those concerts, I felt inspired to do some of the
on, it wouldn't come on.
Hello, everyone. I hope you enjoyed yourselves and found tonight's concert of music by women as inspiring as I did. Women's voices are powerful. Thank you once again for sharing this evening with us and supporting the considerable talent of the women we have featured as composers and performers. We want to pay special acknowledgement to our choreographers and dancers, Natalee and Siva, who helped us expand our modalities in exciting ways. Remember that this crowdcast performance can be rewatched and shared, and please also consider donating via the Collaborative Musicians Project website and showing your patronage by following us on the Ladies Reading Society Patreon site. We thank you sincerely for being such a wonderful virtual audience and for being so supportive of women in the arts. Goodbye, everybody.